You're listening to The Standard Angler, and my daddy's the host.
All right, well, special thanks to my sweetheart for the introduction, and welcome to the Sustainable Angler Podcast. I'm Rick Crawford, angler, sustainability consultant, and founder of Emerger Strategies. This season, we're launching the Sustainability Blueprint, a deep dive into how fishing and outdoor brands can grow, meet retailer demands, navigate emerging regulations, and protect the places we all love. If you're part of the fishing and outdoor industry, this is your roadmap to surviving and thriving in a changing world. Let's build better brands and protect what we love together. Today on The Sustainable Angler, I'm joined by Iannuzzi, author of one of my favorite sustainability books, Greener Products: The Making and Marketing of Sustainable Brands. Al is the president and founder of Iannuzzi Sustainability Solutions and a pioneer in corporate sustainability. With more than 35 years of experience, he's held senior leadership roles at the Estee Lauder Companies and Johnson & Johnson, helping major brands embed sustainability into product design, sourcing, packaging, and strategy. In this episode, Al explains why there's no such thing as a green product, only greener ones, because sustainability is about continuous improvement, not perfection. He shares why the most important step any brand can take is understanding the full life cycle impact of its products, from raw materials and ethical sourcing to end of life. We also discuss why communicating your improvements is just as important as making them, how retail leaders like Walmart and REI have used market pressure to drive change, why brands need an emerging issues process to stay ahead of regulation, how circular economy thinking is reshaping product design, and why CEOs shouldn't let the perfect get in the way of the good. Al even shares how fishing and the legacy of Jacques Cousteau inspired his career in sustainability. Hope you enjoy. And before we dive into the interview, I just want to say thank you. I'm truly grateful that you take the time to listen to this podcast. I hope these conversations inspire you to take action for nature. If you're enjoying the show, a quick free way to support it is by leaving a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. The Sustainable Angler is available anywhere you listen to podcasts and is also airing Saturdays at 2 p.m. on Charleston's first and only community-supported radio station, Ohm Radio, 96.3 FM. This episode of The Sustainable Angler is brought to you by Emerger Strategies, Ecolytics, and a New Earth Project, the sustainability initiative of Atlantic Packaging. Hey everybody, Rick Crawford here. If you're running a fishing or outdoor brand, you probably got into this business for the freedom, a desire to work in an industry that you actually care about, and to protect what you love, not wrestle with sustainability scorecards and compliance regulations. But here's the truth. Retailers and regulators are paying close attention, and the brands that can answer clearly are the ones that keep their products on the shelf. That's where Emerger Strategies comes in. We help brands get retailer and regulator ready, and we help you make the business case for sustainability, so compliance strengthens your brand instead of slowing it down. That's why I built the Compliance Ready Brand Blueprint. It's a clear, practical roadmap that shows you what matters, what's coming, and gets your sustainability house in order in 30 days. If you want to protect your brand, your margins, and what you love, you'll find the blueprint at emergerstrategies.com. If you're running a fishing, outdoor, food, or apparel brand, sustainability isn't just marketing. It's directly tied to the landscapes, waterways, and communities your business depends on. But actually tracking and improving your impact can get complicated fast. Ecolytics is a software platform that helps values-driven companies measure and manage their environmental and social impact all in one place. Ecolytics helps replace scattered spreadsheets with a clear system for tracking things like emissions, sourcing practices, and social impact, so you know where you stand and what to improve next. They specialize in helping companies pursue B Corp certification, one of the most rigorous and respected standards for business sustainability. What I appreciate is that Ecolytics works hand in hand with sustainability consultants, including folks like me. That means companies get expert guidance and a platform that keeps the work organized, credible, and audit ready. Whether you're exploring B Corp certification or just getting started with sustainability as a business, Ecolytics turns your good intentions into measurable action. To learn more, visit ecolytics.io. That's ECOLYTICS.io, and mention the Sustainable Angler podcast to get a discount on your first year subscription. Thanks to Ecolytics for supporting the show and for supporting businesses that protect the places we love.
Thanks, Rick. It's my pleasure.
Great. Well, Al, I'll have to say, I know of your work because of this book, which I have highlighted, and oh no, you can't see it. I've highlighted and read through and done all the things, Greener Products, the making and marketing of sustainable brands. So I guess I will kick things off just by saying thank you for putting this out into the universe, and making this information available. But before, and we're going to get into the book some, but before we do that, I wanted to just get things kicked off with, if you wouldn't mind providing an introduction aside from author for the listeners out there.
Sure. Yeah. So, hi, everybody. I'm Al Iannuzzi, and I have over 35 years experience in the sustainability field. My first job was working for the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, and then I moved on to Johnson & Johnson, where I was a environmental manager for some of their factories, medical products manufacturing. And then I had moved into Johnson & Johnson corporate, and I kind of moved my way into the discipline of product stewardship. I started their Design for the Environment program, and I started this greener product development process called Earthwords. And that kind of was my, I guess, greener product kickoff, and the whole field of product stewardship. I led it for Johnson & Johnson's three divisions, which is pharmaceutical, medical products, and at that time they had consumer products, which they since spun off. Then I was recruited to be vice president of sustainability at the Estee Lauder Companies, a prestige beauty company, house of a lot of great brands. And I've done that for 7 years, and now I am running my own consulting firm called Iannuzzi Sustainability Solutions. I also have taught at Indiana University, Purdue University, a course that I developed called Product Improvement and Sustainability. It was a master's degree level course based on my book, Greener Products. And now I am teaching for Fordham University, their executive MBA program. I'm teaching sustainability strategy class for the MBA students. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
That's awesome, and what an awesome career, and love having someone with your experience on the show, because to make this a little bit relatable, Al, my company, Emerger Strategies, we do sustainability consulting primarily for fishing and outdoor brands, and I talk I talk a lot about sustainability, and we execute sustainability strategies, but it's always so helpful to have someone like you on the show who's got this deep knowledge and expertise beyond. It's always better coming from someone else with more experience. I'll say that. So I wanted to get this kicked off with, why are greener products so important for businesses in the 21st century? And I'll stop there.
Yeah. So whenever I teach on sustainability, and especially on greener products, I like to use some data that came out of this book that was written by some guys from the consulting firm McKinsey, which is, a very large management consulting firm, which companies pay millions of dollars for their advice. So they came out with this book called Resource Revolution. And the reason I like to quote some of the data from that book is because there's people all over the spectrum when it comes to environmental issues and sustainability. I grew up in the environmental movement, and I've seen, a lot of people, well-meaning people, have like overstated environmental issues, and they become, kind of unbelievable in what they're saying. The end of the world's coming because of not addressing environmental issues, which I've never been a true believer in that type of speak. And then there's some people on the other end where they pretty much think that there's no concern at all. I'm kind of like more in the middle, where I think what we should be doing is, if at all possible, we should be reducing our environmental impact across the board. So this book, Resource Revolution, they make the case that by 2030, there's going to be a huge increase in the middle class in the world, primarily from India and China, where those consumers are growing, astronomically. And all of these millions and maybe billions of middle class consumers are going to have disposable income that they never had before. So they're going to want the same products that we have: cell phones, televisions, cars, and the like, all those type of things. And because of that, there's going to be a huge competition for raw materials to make products. And that alone is kind of like, I'm like, no matter what your point of view is, that we can all agree that this is something that's really happening, because it is. And there is going to be a greater competition for raw materials. So therefore, doesn't it make sense to design products in a more efficient manner? One of the key concepts in design for the environment is dematerialization, right? And we've seen that throughout the years. Probably one of the greatest examples is like the cell phone that everybody takes for granted that they have in their hands. I mean, I've been around for a while, so I remember way back when we had like video camcorders, these big huge things with battery packs just to do the video part of it, right? And then I had a really nice phone camera, which a lot of materials to make that camera, right? And then to call people, well, we didn't have cell phones, but if you remember the first version of a cell phone, of a portable mobile phone, which we thought was the coolest thing ever, it was huge. It was like 12 inches long. It was really thick. All those things now are combined into one device, and there's probably even more than there's text message. You could surf the internet. I mean, it's amazing what a cell phone could do. And you think about all of that, the materials that if we didn't have that invention, all those other materials we'd have, to get all those materials to do that. So that's that dematerialization. If you can bring a product to market that has the same or better functionality with less materials, that's a good thing all around, right? It's good from efficiency, it's good from a resource efficiency perspective, and it's good from a cost perspective too, because cost of goods sold is less when you're using less materials. So that's why, I'm a big believer in that, we need to do product development in a better and a different way.
Absolutely. And I think that also just, one of the things that I try and do with my clients is help them make the business case for these decisions, right? And there's a real one, and this is an example of that. Reduce your cost of goods sold, improve environmental performance, kind of a win-win. Yeah.
Yeah. And you'll see that one of the business cases for sustainability is the reputation of the company. When I was talking to business students during Climate Week in New York City, I actually spoke at a Fordham University event they had, and I was making the case, like, is sustainability a business imperative? And I was saying, I remember way back when we didn't even use the word sustainability. When I first started my career, it was like, environmental protection, and it was like corporate social responsibility. So we did these things, reducing the amount of water we used, the amount of waste that was generated, right? Because it was the right thing to do. And, nowadays, some people are like, thinking, oh, well, there's a big pushback on sustainability. And I'm like, yeah, well, it's causing companies to look at things in a more narrow way in focusing on the most important things to the company, but it's still there and it's still important just from the very base of being a good corporate citizen or a responsible company. You have to do these things.
Absolutely. And on the book, I mean, this is the third edition, right? So there's been several iterations of this, and you wrote this greener products after spending years inside of global brands. What was maybe missing from the sustainability conversation that made you feel that this book needed to be out there?
Yeah, so when I wrote the first edition, I was working at Johnson and Johnson, and I developed the product stewardship function at Johnson and Johnson, and I was working with marketers too, because one of the things I like to say is whenever I speak about this, there's no such thing as a green product, because what is green anyway? And you can always improve a product. If you look at the life cycle of a product, the raw materials that you acquire, the manufacturing processes, the use phase, and the end of life of the product and its packaging, you always can improve those things. But the other thing I like to say too is, what good is a greener product if nobody knows about it? That's the marketing part of it. So we're working with marketers, like once we improve the product, like how do they take advantage of that in the marketplace? Because to me, like the highest level of place for a product steward to be, or a sustainability professional, is when you've actually made an improvement into processes or a product from a sustainability perspective, and you could take advantage of that in the marketplace, and it helps you to win sales, because you have a more improved product here that consumers are looking for. So to me, that when I first wrote that book, I was working in this field, but I knew there were books on design for the environment and industrial ecology, right? There were books on green marketing, but there were no books that combined the two. And I think it's just as important to communicate the improvements as to make the improvements. So I felt there was a need out there, and I still feel like there's no books out there that I'm aware of that combine the two, like what I had done. So I put my book into three parts. One is the case for greener products. The second section is how to make greener products using case study analysis of leading companies throughout the world in different sectors. And then the last part of it, the third part, is how to appropriately market the greener aspects of the product, how to avoid greenwashing, and how to use, let's say, eco logos the proper way, and what marketing messages resonate the most with your target market or target consumer. So that's why I wrote the greener products. And in our discussion at the beginning of, before we started this, you said that you found the book to be very useful and helpful in your business. And I said that's what lights my fire. Like, that's why I wrote the book. I wrote it for it to be used in universities, which it is being used in universities, and to help people to design products in a more sustainable manner. And whenever I hear stories about that, it really makes me feel good and makes me feel like the book is making a difference.
Yeah, well, I'll just say, for whether you're a sustainability practitioner, whether you're a student, anything of the likes, truly, I had never read anything quite like it. Like I went through an MBA in sustainable business program in 2009 through 11. So at this point, pretty dated on that front. And we read a book called The Green Marketing Manifesto, and that was part of our coursework, right? And so that was like a very green marketing focused, avoid greenwashing. And now, 15 years later, I had just never came across a book, to your point, that married the two, where it was like, oh yes, yes, this is how it was. I feel like it was. It had just never been published in a book in this way. And so it was just like everything that I've also felt was like, right, yeah, but you have these great stories that, like, it's like, I think sustainability is like a person trying to become the best version of themselves, right? And so it's like, okay, you're becoming a better business, and you have great stories that you could tell. And I just love that this book highlighted that there was proof, there were the cases, and there were also some rules to follow. And so you need to check out this book, everyone. I'll just say that. So if a product manager, or say founder of a business, so I have business owners that are anglers, and I have fishing, fly fishing, outdoor brands that listen to this podcast. So if they only remembered one idea from Greener Products, what would it be, and why is product the real make or break point for sustainability?
Yeah, so I probably would say like understanding your product's life cycle impacts. So
Okay.
every product has a life cycle impact. So where did the raw materials come from? And there's some important issues there, not only from the raw material acquisition part of it, but who are the suppliers that you're working with, and are those suppliers operating in a ethical manner, avoiding topics like deforestation or social impacts like forced labor or child labor. Like, you don't want your brand to be associated with that. So that's why it's really important. And a lot of the impacts of a product are even from the raw material acquisition phase, especially if you're using like agricultural raw materials. So I'm sure like, fly rods, like probably using bamboo and things like that, right? Some synthetics, I'm sure, are involved in the manufacturing of fishing rods. I'm a fisherman also. I enjoy that myself. And that's
Love it.
probably one of the reasons why I got into the field. I think early on, I took an interest in fishing, and my mother or father didn't fish. They didn't even know. I remember my mom first taking me someplace to go, and using a hot dog for bait because she didn't know any, and she knew I wanted to go fishing. So, but I kind of like learned a thing or two from reading Outdoor Life and Field and Stream magazines. I was like a junkie in those. That's how I learned how to fish, and that's how I think it kind of fostered my love for the outdoors and the beauty of God's creation. So the life cycle impacts and understanding the hot spots of the life cycle impacts of your product. Is it in the raw material acquisition? Is it in the use phase of the product or the end of life of the product? So I would say that's probably an important thing. And then once you know where the high impact areas are, focus your efforts on minimizing those impacts. So that would be probably the biggest point I'd want to leave with people. If they only
Love
had one.
that. Yeah, and I also love the fishing analogy, because that was I can totally relate. I grew up fishing a little bit. I just have to share the story with you because but I wonder how many of us are out there, right? As sustainability and fishing and outdoor enthusiasts. But when I got introduced to fly fishing after college, that's why my company's a merger strategies. That's the life cycle stage of the aquatic insect where it sprouts its wings. And that, when I learned about the life cycle stages of aquatic insects, that was my first, unbeknownst to me, that was my first introduction to systems thinking that is so involved in sustainability, because you're starting to understand, oh, there's different phases of the bugs, and the water is doing different things. There's different temperatures, and there's different things happening. And what happens if there's a mine operation upstream of my favorite trout stream, and all of these things. And so anyway, I just had to share that. There was too many similarities there not to.
Yeah, it's pretty. I love the name of your company, and that's cool. One of the things I like to teach in product improvement is the whole concept of mimicking natural systems, and the concept of biomimicry. I think is a really cool concept, and even using that in product development is kind of amazing too. So anytime you can mimic what's going on in the natural systems, it's a winner.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we're moving from this linear take, make, waste model to trying to mimic nature as a system to something that's more circular. And
Yep.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean a life cycle assessment can help you better understand, right?
100%. Yeah. And you hit on another topic too. It's called the circular economy, which also is all about like, at the end of life of a product, it shouldn't be waste. It should be able to be broken down and put back into commerce, either, as the same or used as a raw material for another industry.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. Okay, so you mentioned this earlier, but I just want to touch on this, that one of the themes in the book is that there are no perfect products, or no, like, most sustainable products, or what have you. And would you would you be able to provide an example of one of the ways you use in the book that best illustrates the reality of these trade-offs and what that is?
Yeah, like what I'll use an example that when I usually speak to students, I'll say, as I said earlier, there's no such thing as a green product. How does that make you feel? And I'll say, think of the greenest product in your mind right now, what you would think of, and ask the students to do that, and then I'll say what I think of when I think of a green product. When people think of green products, is like, oh well, let's say a seventh generation product or a method product, because those are known to be mindful of sustainability issues in the design and manufacturing and the selling part of the product life cycle. And I'll like, yeah, if you think about, let's say, a method product, let's say a hand soap or dish detergent or something like that, that product can be improved too, because it takes the raw materials, again, going back to life cycle, the raw material acquisition phase. And then I have a picture of this too, like if you can imagine a PowerPoint slide where it's showing the arrows and all of around the life cycle, but it'll show like raw materials. And then you take those raw materials and you transport them to a company that does some further manufacturing, and then it will get transported to maybe the final manufacturing place. And then from there, it gets transported to the retailer, let's say, or wherever it's being sold. And then it gets brought to, let's say it's a consumer product, to the home. And then there's the use phase of the product. And then at the end of the life of the product, right, and the package, what happens to those things? And in the end, there's all throughout that life cycle, you can make improvements. That's why I didn't title my book Green Products. I titled it Greener Products, because it's a process. It's a continuous improvement process. You always could improve on a product. And I also like to say there's no such thing as a sustainable company, because sustainability is the journey. You always can get better, and sustainability is so much broader than just the life cycle impacts. It has to do with everything of how you manage a company. So you always can get better at things, and there's always a new thing to manage. That's another reason I think I like the field of sustainability, because it's so dynamic, and you really have to be on top of your game to kind of stay ahead of the curve to anticipate, like, what's the next issue that could affect my business.
Yeah, well, there's a couple things that you just said there, and reading your book helped to help shine a light on some of this for me, because I work with some companies that are brands that sell to Walmart. You mentioned retailers, or REI, and what I'm seeing, and I would love to get your take on this, is that it seems like and I'm also seeing it in specialty retail now, by the way, but every big box retailer now has some type of sustainability requirement or related requirement that brands have to have. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, that's great that you brought that up, because in my the first section of my book, I talk about drivers for greener products, and to me the biggest driver is what I call a market driver. So it's not regulatory driven, but it's driven by the marketplace. And to me, one of the biggest events that ever happened in sustainability that kind of put sustainability on the map is when Walmart started talking about sustainability. Because if you think about all of the thousands of companies that sell products into Walmart. Walmart's footprint is not the brick and mortar. The biggest part of it is not the brick and mortar stores. People who might not have thought deeply about sustainability might think, oh, it's about the stores and running them more energy efficient. That's their biggest impact. No, it's in their supply chain of the thousands of companies that's selling into Walmart, and their supply chain all the way back to the acquisition of raw materials and all the impacts on the way. It's like mind-boggling, all that. So one of the things Walmart's famous for is like they became like a de facto regulator. They would tell, when they first started, they would tell you, we don't want you to sell products in our store that contain these ingredients. They had a list of ingredients, like, it wasn't a regulation telling you to do it. It was a company that you have to be aware of this. Then they would ask, tell me about your packaging. Is it recyclable? And report on the different aspects of the packaging. What type of greenhouse gas emission processes do you have? Are you reporting your greenhouse gas emissions? Can you help us with our project Gigaton to remove a gigaton of greenhouse gas emissions from our supply chain? So those things, that's when it really caught management's attention when I was at Johnson & Johnson. Because if you think about Johnson & Johnson, they sold pharmaceuticals, they sold medical devices, and consumer products. All three are sold at a Walmart because they have a pharmaceutical pharmacy, right? And so they were the biggest customer of Johnson & Johnson in the world. So when your customer starts asking about sustainability issues, it makes management pay attention. Prior to that point, it was like bottom up. It was like, hey, we should be doing these things because it's the right thing to do, and we encourage the company, and we set goals back in the 1990s to reduce our waste, to reduce our packaging, but it was a bottom up thing. Then once our largest customer in the world started asking for it, it started making a bigger difference in those discussions you had with buyers at Walmart, because they would bring up sustainability. So you wanted to have something positive to say so that they feel better about your company, and that really was I think a monumental thing is when Walmart started talking about sustainability and asking their suppliers to help them to minimize their impacts.
Yeah, and I think too the way that I try and frame it for either brands that are already selling, or maybe they're smaller brands who wish that one day they aspire to get into one of these retailers, is, hey, like, these retailers have their own goals. They have their own net zero for emissions goals or waste goals or whatever they are. And you should get familiar with that. And you should understand that you are either going to help them or hinder them from achieving their own goals. And if you can help them and make the business case in the process, that's what you should probably do, right?
100%. And, you could be, there's the B2B part of it. That's you selling into Walmart. But then there's also, if you do, and I speak about this in my book too, if you improve your product and you're B2C, even, through Walmart, let's say, as an example, if you're selling in Target or whoever, REI you mentioned, once you've improved your product, no matter who the consumer is, and I cover all different groups of consumers in my book, and the dissecting that and who's your target market. But regardless of who your target market is, I think the sustainability message resonates with just about every consumer because it makes you feel better about the brand, right? Like and I call it a product improvement from a sustainability lens, and AND. So if you have a product and you and your competitor are at the same price point and the same, let's say, quality, but you can demonstrate to your target market that your product is more sustainable because you made certain improvements, then you should win in the marketplace because it's going to, push you over the edge. I never believe in like leading with sustainability unless you're going after that sliver of people who are only, are willing to pay a premium for more sustainable products and are very wealthy. That's a different story. But the mass consumer is not going to pay extra for a more sustainable product on average. But they will buy your product if it's got the right quality, it's got the right performance, and right price point. And they feel like it's more sustainable and it resonates with them. And that could be because you improved it from, let's say, an energy perspective, if it's a plug-in, or if you're using less materials and it's better for the environment. And it also if you're connecting your product to, let's say, a good cause, like or connected to the Nature Conservancy. Like when I was at Johnson & Johnson, our Neutrogena Naturals line was connected to the Nature Conservancy. So when you're buying their product, you're actually helping to support the Nature Conservancy. It makes me feel good about it. And if the product works well, then it's a win-win, and for the customer, for the manufacturer as well.
Yeah, I love that, and that's such a relevant point for a lot of fishing and outdoor brands who tie their business to different cause marketing organizations. Whether that's 1% for the planet or things like that, right? Because it's like, hey, this is we benefit from a healthy environment. Like the thing that I always tell fishing brands I work with is like, your business is completely dependent on the health of our fisheries. Like so you have to take this into consideration. Like to do that you would not be effectively managing risks as a business. But the upside to it is, if you do this in the right way, it could also be really good for your business, to your point, to make people feel just good about it, right? That you're willing to do that.
I like to think of sustainability as having a offensive and defensive strategy.
Okay.
The offensive strategy is when you made an improvement where you have a really good cause marketing relationship. It could help you increase sales. But if you put that aside and you think about the defensive strategy, it's like you don't want your brand to be associated with something negative, and especially if you're an outdoor brand. If let's say one of your suppliers is doing something really nasty to the environment, they get found out, and then it gets found out that you're buying your raw materials from them, or somebody in your supply chain, or even your own manufacturing processes get found out that they're not operating in a good way, and it gets associated to your brand. It can really damage your brand reputation. And in some cases, some consumers will never buy your brand again if you're found out to be in what they believe to be an unethical manufacturer.
Yeah, and this is all happening really fast, right? Because we've got and I took this from your book, right? Is like looking at those different drivers of saying like, okay, here's like retailers, and you have the consumers, obviously, but also we are also seeing sort of a rise in regulations at the state level. There are things for EPR for packaging is a huge one. Chemical restricted RSLs, PFAS. So part of that, where my head went with that when you were talking about like, hey, are you aware of like what's happening in your supply chain? Like this is part of that process, I feel like, right? Where you're like really getting intimate with how you're getting your products.
100%. And regulatory compliance is like base business in my mind. Like you have to comply with the regulations, because if you don't, then you're going to get fined. But then there's the above regulatory type of concerns. Like I cover this in my book too, early, I forgot what chapter, but it's like one of the first 3 chapters, having an emerging issues process and trying to stay ahead of the issues that could affect your brand. And you want to, that's even beyond regulatory requirements. That's like catching things that might become a regulation down the line, but something that people might be concerned about that you're selling your products to.
Well, I have to ask, because is there anything that's on your radar as potentially emerging? That's pretty broad, right? Depends on the business, but is there anything that is on your radar?
Yeah, it does depend on the business, but I would say from a macro level, one of the things that I've been seeing over the last, let's say 2 years, that's been gaining momentum has to do with the connection of climate issues with biodiversity and nature issues. So looking at what's the impact of your product from a nature perspective, when it comes to, mostly it'll be on raw material, but it could be the use depending on the type of product that you have, and understanding your nature impacts and trying to mitigate those nature impacts. And water, the use of water in the supply chain, because water being a precious commodity, especially in certain parts of the world, and understanding like where's the water scarce parts of my supply chain and or suppliers operating in a water scarce environment where they could actually, maybe not be able to manufacture because of water restrictions. So understanding all those risks, I think, is something fairly new-ish that's coming across to all companies.
Interesting. Well, thank you for sharing that. Always interested to see what's next in this evolving field. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
We set out with the New Earth Project to really start a movement.
It's a global coalition of people who are deeply concerned and want to accelerate the transition away from problematic packaging to more sustainable solutions.
Our entire value proposition was built on helping companies package things better. We were doing sustainability before sustainability was cool. We just called it packaging optimization. And packaging optimization really is about using less. And we built our whole business on that. People send us their products, their goods, and we help them design packaging systems and solutions for the least possible cost, utilizing the least amount of material. Use less is always the right answer.
And that's what I see with companies like a New Earth Project, is it's like we're just trying to create solutions for big companies and small, that makes it easier for them, cheaper for them, whatever it is. and then has less impact. Not just trying to tell people you should have less impact and making the choice forced on them. Like, make it better for everybody, and it'll make it better for the whole world.
We see the problem, and we are with you.
All right, so I know that we touched on marketing a little bit earlier, but to kind of part of this process, right, is, you clearly define what some of these drivers are. You talk about the different ways that you could improve your products and market some of those. But the next step in that, right, is like, let's say that you make these improvements internally and you want to market it. Everyone's fear is greenwashing, right? And so every company's fear is like, oh, I don't want to be accused. And now, interestingly, there's a new term called green hushing, where like you're doing really great things, but you're scared to talk about it. How, which is pretty wild, but how can companies avoid greenwashing? And I'll stop there because that's kind of a loaded question in itself.
Yeah. I would say read my book.
Yeah.
I do cover how to avoid greenwashing, and I do cover green hushing in my book, in the third edition book. That was a new thing. That's one example of a newer thing that happened since my second edition to the third edition, was the whole green hushing thing, which blows my mind too. Like, it's like, if you're doing something good, don't be afraid to talk about it. Yeah, you always could be afraid that you're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. So some brands and some marketers are afraid to speak about it, and because they're afraid that they're not perfect. But you have to, and this is the key to avoiding greenwashing, is you have to speak with facts and data. So we used to have the saying when I was at Johnson & Johnson, in God we trust, all others bring data. So you have to have data to substantiate any claim. So if you're saying, let's say, this package contains 30% post-consumer recycled content, and you want to speak about that to the consumer, make sure you have, all your data to substantiate that PCR claim, there. Or if you're saying that your product is free of PFAS, you mentioned, make sure you have the data to substantiate that for your suppliers that might be supplying you raw materials that could have PFAS in their raw materials that they're selling to you. Make sure the certifications and all that type of stuff. So that's one way. Another way is having third-party endorsements. So legitimate third parties. So I cover eco logos in my book too. And, I use this phrase too. I said, choose your eco logos wisely, because you could get an eco logo and it might not even resonate with your consumer, because the truth be known that, most eco logos consumers never even heard of, right? So you good as having an eco logo that nobody ever even heard of, right? So you need to have something that it will really connect with your consumer. But having a third party endorsement that for an eco logo that's been around for a while, that has some noteworthiness to it, is also a way to avoid greenwashing, and also a way to give your consumer some confidence in that you've kind of like paid attention to these issues, and you've gone through, because it's not easy getting these eco logos. You've gone through the pain to get it, and the expense, because they are expensive to get too.
Yeah, love that. So like, just for anyone listening out there, examples could be anything from the company level, like B Corp, right, is like a third party, to anything to the packaging or product level, like Al was saying, of like, hey, make sure you have data, and then if you can third party certify that, that's even stronger case for that, I would think.
100%. Yep. There's a lot of eco logos out there. There's like hundreds of them. So that's why I always say, choose your eco logos wisely. Like,
Yeah.
When I was at Estee Lauder, we only used a few, right? And, like one that is very common that most people recognize would be like FSC certified paperboard, right? That's like the standard out there. It's a third party certification that, many would recognize, but it's also something for it's got a history, and that would just be another example of one that would be on a product level.
Yeah, that's a great one. And you're starting to see more of that. Like, I would encourage anyone listening to this, next time you're in Target, or next time you're even going to the grocery store, like, look at the packaging and the labels that got, because I'm starting to see it. I mean, I'm a nerd, so I kind of look for it, but I'm starting to see it in more places, right? Where you're like, oh wow, like look, they made this, and they're calling out that it's now made with 90% less plastic and have a QR code to the data and all sorts of cool stuff.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I mean, those are the things we were just talking about earlier that could, let your customer feel better about buying your product.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are in play.
Okay. So this is a question. This book was written. I think it's a great read I wish this book was available when I was first learning about sustainability, but I've been Merger Strategies is turning 10 years old this year, and well, thank you. And I still got a ton out of this book. So this goes from anyone from a student to someone who's got 10 years of sustainability experience. That this is a great book. So my question is, when a CEO, right, or a brand leader who picks up this book and wants to really dive deeper into some of this, what's maybe one of the decisions you hope they approach differently from reading your book?
Well, one of the things I think I'd love to see is for the companies to embed sustainability into the product development life cycle. So new product launch or new product development, usually most companies have a stage gate process. And here's a fun fact for you. 85% of the environmental impacts of a product are set in the concept stage of the product. So that means like I'm going to bring a new product to market, and I have the design in the concept phase, and these are the materials I'm planning on using in it. When you get further down the life cycle, it's harder to make changes to the product. So that's why you want to have some key questions up front in the new product development life cycle. So that'd be one thing I'd say would be pretty important. And the other thing, which is again connecting the marketing, that's why it's really important to think of both simultaneously, is that even in the early stages, we did this at Estee Lauder, where we would think, well, does your brand want to make any claims, maybe regarding sourcing on the product? Think about it in the concept stage, because if you want to make let's say a responsible sourcing claim, you're using a raw material, maybe like a palm oil or something like that, and you want to make a claim, think about, how you're going to make that claim and what needs to be true early on, because once you get too far down the line, it might be, you've already chosen your suppliers, blah, blah, blah. It'll be too late to do that, or it'll be too expensive to make the changes. So that's why you want to embed in the earliest stages of life cycle of a product some checks on environmental issues, on sustainability issues.
Yeah, super smart, right? Because if you can get it embedded in, I guess, more of the design phase, right? It would be easier than, hey, I don't know. I think of an analogy of a house, right? Like you don't want to mid-construction try and make changes to the design of your house, right? It's going to cost way more, right?
An upcharge.
Yeah.
Right? One of those upcharges at some point in life, right?
Yeah. So yeah, much easier to do this earlier on than later, right?
Yeah.
That's great. Well, how about I'm going to kind of stay focused on brand leaders or this could apply to, but how should brand leaders think about ROI for sustainability beyond just short-term margins? Like, okay, we've done a energy efficiency upgrade and we were able to reduce some costs that way, and that was good. But how should leaders think about this from a long-term view?
Yeah, ROI is really great. I remember when I first started at Estee Lauder, my meeting with the CEO, he's like, Al, everything that we do from a sustainability perspective should have an ROI, on it, and of some point, and that could actually be a, payback, like some simple examples is if you don't have LED lighting, it's usually a 1 to 2 year payback to put LED lighting in there. Yeah, there's initial expense, but you're going to get that back pretty quickly. Another one that maybe some of your listeners might not have thought about, like if you have office buildings, factories, like at Estee Lauder, we were 100% renewable electricity around the world since 2020. And one of the ways we did that is by signing in North America a virtual power purchase agreement to enable 22 megawatt wind farm to be built in Oklahoma. When we signed that agreement, we thought we might have broke even with that, but because of energy prices increasing over time, it was a 15-year agreement. We actually wound up making over $5 million since 2020. So that's current as of last year. Yeah. So that was unanticipated. We negotiated with the manufacturer of the wind farm a certain energy rate that we would agree to, and if they were able to get more, then we got the delta. In some months it was less; we would have to pay the difference. But overall, it was more, and we actually made the money. We didn't anticipate that. So you also get a guarantee of electricity price, so you'll know what you're paying for electricity for 15 years because you've negotiated this price already with a developer. So that's another one that maybe that actually is a real ROI. But the other ROI, which is probably the one that we've been hitting on during this discussion, is really the reputation ROI. It's a reputation of not doing it, and it's a reputation of doing it. So it might cost you more money, of using a material that might be a little bit more expensive, but it could enable you to make certain claims, right? That could resonate with your consumer and build that brand loyalty, and some of the places, that you mentioned, I think a lot of, like you mentioned, REI, I think the consumer that goes there is probably a very loyal consumer, right? And they expect certain things from them. So, if you're selling into REI, you're, if you have something really good to say, about that brand, I think it will resonate with their buyers, and it also will resonate with the type of person that's buying the product from that type of a retailer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, ROI too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think about that a lot too, because it's like an outdoor or a fishing like consumer, performance and quality is a big part of it. But then when you say, okay, and cost is always a factor. But once you get besides that, and I start looking at two different brands, and one has more sustainable attributes of some sort, they're a 1% of the Planet member, or they're a B Corp member. And I don't think I'm alone in this. I always choose the one who's doing more for the planet and can verify that. And, everybody wants products that perform and function and are of high quality. But they also, I think, increasingly want brands that are better for the planet. And I agree that I don't think they're willing to pay more for that. I think that they want the costs stay the same, and they want those attributes.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, and I'm a true believer in that. It builds brand loyalty. One of the goals that we set at Estee Lauder when I first started there back in 2018, we set a goal that every one of our brands should be associated with a significant either environmental or social purpose, so like a cause of some sort, because we believe that brands that are thought of or connected to that are thought of in a higher level, as far as a more meaningful brand that I want to be associated with, and I am proud to buy their products.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that makes even more sense, particularly when you're talking about brands that are directly tied to the outdoors, right? I mean, it's like to not do it seems a little off-brand, I would say.
It's risky, I think.
All right. Well, this. Okay, so here's another question. Sorry, I have a list maybe too long because I wanted to take advantage of this opportunity, Al. So, I'm going to ask this, and then I'm going to have maybe a few rapid fire questions as we're getting close to the top of our hour here. Um, so if you were advising a small to medium outdoor brand today, where and they're either I'll say two scenarios. One brand is just starting their journey of their sustainability journey, and another is further along and maybe is starting to explore life cycle impact. How would you advise them to start their or continue their sustainability journey? So start and continue.
Yeah. So one thing, I think you want to understand where you want to show up as a brand and it depends on who you're selling to. So, you hit on some good things earlier, like am I selling into, or do I want to sell into a retailer that has maybe some high sustainability standards? Okay, what are those standards, and understanding them, and then where can we, help or support those things, or what would resonate most to our brand. So that would be one thing for sure, understanding the end first. Excuse me. The other thing, I think you might have some things that you're doing that you could speak about already, and I cover this in my book too. It's that I explain how to run an eco innovation session. So part of that eco innovation session, and I've ran these, in companies I've worked for. One part of it, which is usually surprising, is like you get a cross section of people in the company. It could be from procurement, it could be from finance, and even HR and a law department, and if you have a sustainability team or environment, health, or safety team, you get them all in a room, and then you're like, hey, are there any things we've done with this product or for our company that we feel good about that we already did, and maybe we've never spoken about, and you put them up on there. Now, and then are there any things that we could do that would be better that we haven't done? And then you kind of like put that on a 4-block, and what are the highest, the most important ones or most impactful ones that would benefit the brand the most, and then you focus on those, and you put it into a project list, and you get assigned project manager, and then you go at it, and then you thinking of the end and means. So if we do this, we'll be able to say X, or we'll be able to help retailer so such and such with their climate programs, or helping them to be able to, maybe you'll be able to get some advantage and be able to do a co-marketing campaign with a retailer if you've done certain things. So that would be would cover an earlier brand and even a more mature brand when it comes to sustainability.
Yeah, love that. That's great advice. Okay, we're going to transition, and I'm going to go through a handful of lightning questions.
I do.
All right. What is one sustainability buzzword you wish would disappear?
Oh, it's sustainability. Oh. I don't know. I can't really think of one that is. I guess eco improved. Like
Okay.
it's those type of things where they're non-substantiated. Greenwashing terms. So eco improved. This product is eco improved, and nobody explains why. How it's eco improved, and it's greenwashing. So
Yeah.
I'd say that. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good one. One underappreciated metric brands should care about.
Underappreciated, huh? I think that most brands use paper packaging. So I think either does your paper packaging include post-consumer recycled content, so you're living into the circular economy, or is it could it be certified from with a third-party certification like we mentioned earlier? There's the FSC as an example.
Okay, yeah, that's good. This is probably pretty loaded, so I'll say one of the best sustainability decisions you've seen a brand make.
One of the best. What would be I'll think about my most recent experience at Estee Lauder, and I would say our La Mer brand
Okay.
started this. So La Mer means the sea in French, right? And their brand is based. One of the raw materials is based on the use of sea kelp, and they started this blue um, Ocean Heart Fund. If I'm saying it right, I might not got it exactly right, but it's this fund which they, put money into, which enables them to work with third parties to conserve the ocean because that's where their raw material comes with. So and to me, that's like a really awesome like connection, a nexus. I speak about this in the book too, having a nexus with your cause marketing relationships, and that to me is a really good one. I think it was a really smart thing, and they're even involved with this guy Philippe Cousteau. He's a brand ambassador for them, and I love when I met him. I was like so thought it was so cool because I used to watch his grandfather Jacques Cousteau with the Water Adventures of Jacques Cousteau, and fun fact is that he was responsible for working with a French engineer to develop the scuba diving equipment, the underwater breathing apparatuses that didn't exist before he came up with that. And then that opened up a whole new world of, to scuba divers and for us to be able to see the mysteries of underwater life, So I thought that was really a great, smart, move that they made.
Yeah, I love that. I love all facets of that. That's great. Actually, quick aside, I had interviewed a filmmaker last year, and he was talking about Jacques Cousteau being one of his heroes, and we had gotten on the topic of like, so as a sustainability consultant, I am big on the data, right, to substantiate claims, like you've mentioned, and he thought his whole life that Jacques Cousteau was this great scientist, and which is true, but he was like really more than that. He was an amazing storyteller, and he was like, and that's what in his mind, he was like, that's where I think brands are going to have to go is have this data, but even be greater storytellers. Which I thought was really interesting. Anyway, I could not tie that Cousteau reference without mentioning it.
I think that's one of the reasons I also got into this field too. We used to walk around and watch as a family. We would watch, Underwater Adventures of Jacques Cousteau.
Same, and I used to. I guess my grandparents maybe gave me like a little library of his books. They were like, anyway, I used to remember looking through that. You never see anything like it before. It was really cool. Okay, so this is the final lightning, even though I interrupted the lightning. So one lesson, greener products, I don't know, maybe I somewhat, well, I'll ask it again regardless. One lesson from greener products you hope every CEO understands.
Yeah, I would say that a big lesson would be that sustainability is a journey and there's no perfect company. Don't let the perfect get in the way of the good. Don't be afraid to speak about things you've done, as long as we discussed, you have the substantiation, to do that. So I would say, no matter where you are in your business journey, that you should, not be afraid to move forward and to use sustainability as a lens for improving your products, improving your company, and maybe bringing your company to even a higher level of performance.
Love it. Well, Al, I really cannot. I was geeking out before this interview, to be honest. So I was just so thrilled that you were willing. I randomly reached out, and anyway, I couldn't be more excited to have gotten this opportunity. So thank you, Greener Products, the making and marketing of sustainable brands. Where can folks learn more about your new consultancy and also pick up a copy of this book?
Yeah, so, follow me on LinkedIn. That's one way to find out more about my what I'm up to for my consulting firm. I have a website for my book too, greenerproducts.biz, and that's another way for you to. And I post a lot on LinkedIn, and I kind of have reposted over there too. That's what I would say. And you could buy the book anywhere. You could buy it directly. Well, if you go to my website, there's a 20% off there. So
Nice.
There's a code that you could use and buy it directly from CRC Press, who's the publisher, or you can just buy it from Amazon or any place else where books are sold.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to head over to emergerstrategies.com for all your sustainability consulting needs, and check out our new The Compliance Ready Brand Blueprint, which is designed to get your sustainability house in order in 30 days or less.